Okay, Netaniko Tsoyanski Pui, Nimtutu Piikani. My name is Jaron Weaselbear, but my traditional Blackfoot name is Singing in the Water, and I come from the Piikani Nation located in southern Alberta, in between Pinch Creek and Fort Macleod. And I just wanted to acknowledge the land that we're on is traditional Blackfoot territory, and also it's the Treaty 7 territory too. So I just wanted to acknowledge where we're at Camp Chief Hector. This camp is named after a Stoney chief, Hector Crawler. Traditional games were a form of education for the young, the young boys back in ancestors' days. The young boys were the ones that were playing these games quite a bit because they were the ones that were getting ready for war and hunting. So as they were playing the games, you had your fathers and your grandfathers keeping an eye on the children to see how they excel at the game. So, if they excelled at the games, then they were ready for, the next level, maybe harder games, or maybe they're ready for to go out hunting with their fathers. For today, for myself, why I use the games is because I like to use them to get the kids to get back out into the nature, going back down to the river, knowing what kind of the wood to use, being respectful to the land and using the land again, because we don't do that as much anymore. And a lot of these games, for the physical, emotional, spiritual, it all connects as one, because when you're playing the games, physically you're out there, you're running, you're throwing, that's the physical part. The emotional part is what you get out of it. When you're running and it makes you feel good, it gets the blood flowing, and it gets you exercise, your skill development. And social part, you're playing with other kids, and that's the social part. You're getting out there and you're making teams, you're being creative with your mind of how to play the game or how to redo a game, restructure it. So those are part of the social. And the spiritual part, of course, that's the part where whenever I do games, I always make sure I say a prayer before I do my games, just to make sure the kids are safe, the instructors are safe, and everybody out there is safe. So anytime we start a game or anything like that, we try and say a prayer before we do any of that. Now we'll talk about our games, our individual games. There's 4 games there that we played, but the first game I want to talk about is called Ring the Pin. So this here is the game. Here it's a hoop that's tied on by leather to a willow stick. And then as you get up to the higher onto the willow, you get to the branches, and those what you would make the hoop out of is the branches. But today, of course, we have our home hardware, our Walmarts and stuff like that. A lot of the times, you could go get a doweling stick like that and buy your leather, and these are craft rings that I have right in here, and I just wrapped them with leather. So a lot of the times that's all they're doing here. When they play this game, they're flicking it up, and as they flick it up, they're doing a spearing motion, and they want to go into the hoop here. Once they do this one here consistently, a lot of the times they would get told to switch to your non-dominant hand. And when you do that, and you get it consistently here, spearing with your non-dominant hand, then you could go on to basically the next level, because this is a smaller hoop here. And when they do this one here, it's the same idea as you're just flicking it up with one hand and spearing. And once you get it with your dominant hand, then you go to your non-dominant hand. And once you get that going, I'll go in there, and your grandfathers or your fathers seeing you doing that to pretty much perfection, then they know you'll be ready for the next game. So next game we're going to talk about is called Hoop Toss. This game here, the sticks are made out of choke cherry, and then we have the hoops here. Of course, the hoops, the same thing as the willow. They're made out of the branches. And then this one here is a little bit different. The branches are inside, but this is hide. This is hide from a deer. It's a deer hide, and then this is leather. You don't necessarily have to be going to get choke cherry and rawhide and stuff like that. Like I said, with a lot of these games, you could go to the local hardware store or whatever, and you get your dowlings, if you want to use dowlings, or some sort of straight stick, and then with your hoops here, you could go to a craft store. This game is very similar to, I guess, the game of horseshoe. It's the same thing. You would have this stuck in the ground, and then if you have smaller age group of kids, you would put the sticks closer, but as you get older, you would put them farther. So you'd have one here, and then one kid stands on this side, the other kid stands here, and when they're throwing their hoops, they're throwing here, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it on there like that. I always like to tell the kids, okay, well, how do you want to score, or how do you want to play it, or how far do you want them apart, so if you want to start close, and then if they keep getting it, then you could start moving further apart. Okay, so next game we're going to talk about is the hoop and arrow game. So with the hoop and arrow game, this game is actually a traditional Blackfoot game. You'll see the hoop here. It's almost like this is your target here. When I roll the hoop like that, the kids will be standing there, and when they throw this arrow, the arrow can't actually go right through the hoop. So as it's rolling, it almost has to stop, and when it lands on the ground, it lands in there like that. And that's how you score your points. So whenever I play, I tell the kids, okay, so how do you want to score it? Obviously, this is bullseye right here. This could be 5 points, going back 4, 3, 2, 1 on the sides here. However you want to score it, that's totally up to you. But that's the object of this game. And with this game, the variations, yes, there's one where they stand still and they throw at the hoop. The second variation I would do with a little bit older kids, say junior high kids, they would be running. So I would be in the middle rolling the hoop, and they would be standing on each side of me. Once I roll the hoop, they got to catch, they got to run, catch up to the hoop. Once they catch up to the hoop, then they throw. Still trying to maintain that way of scoring like that. For the Blackfoot people, this game is in our holy bundles too, and it's pretty respectful game. And a lot of the kids too that I teach, I always let them know that this is part of the Blackfoot people, and just giving them that little history of it. Next game I'll talk about is the run and scream. So with run and scream, you don't really need too much materials. You don't need nothing all but a stick and your voice and your breath, because all these are going to do is mark where you stop. So with this game here, what you're doing is you're taking a deep breath and you're screaming. So you go, ah, and you're running until you run out of breath and you can't scream no more, and that's where you stop, and that's where your stick comes into play, and that's where you basically stab it into the ground, and then the next person goes. When the next person goes, he's trying to beat where you stop. Like a lot of the times, kids have stress too, and they just want to yell and stuff like that. So this game is perfect for that. You could have the kids yelling at the top of their lungs and stuff like that, and nobody's going to tell you, hey, be quiet, you're yelling too much. So, that's a good game too that I like to say for the kids, just to get out there and yell and run. It makes them feel good after that. It makes them feel a lot better that, maybe they got something off their shoulder, and stuff like that. So to me, that's a good lung builder game, vocal cords, and, it's a good game to relieve what's inside of you. I just want to send that message out there, don't feel like you have to have a First Nations person there to show you these games, because I always like to, show people that these games are so similar to today's games, so like a lot of the games, you could go to the store and you buy your game there and you go home and play it. Well, these games here are so similar too, and it gives you that sense of community, that sense of family, because if you want, go to the hardware store and you could sit at the table and make these games with your kids, and then you're ready to play. So, you know, a lot of that is bringing your family home together, your community together. So, you know, it's all about humanity. It's not about this race, that race, and, you know, it's about getting a better understanding of each other so that we could walk this earth together. We could share what we know with each other. If you want to play these games, by all means, go ahead and play them. But also, I just want to send that message is to maintain that history part, you know, telling your kids, yes, these are First Nations games. They come from the First Nations people. But going on to today, anybody could play these games.